Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to use the operator synth instrument in Ableton. And operator is most well known for being an FM synthesizer, but it's got the ability to create all kinds of different sounds, not only FM synthesizer sounds. So let me try to walk you through basically how this is set up so that this whole display makes sense to you. So this is basically broken into 8 separate parts. And then you've got your middle section, which is a display for each of these 8 different parts. So over on the left side, you've got 4 different oscillators. And think of an oscillator as 4 different simple synthesizers. And each of those synthesizers plays one type of waveform. And then you can combine these waveforms together to create interesting textures and sounds. So for example, this is our first oscillator down here. And we've got it set to a square note. So if I play the key, and as you can see, this is the only one that's turned up, so we're not going to hear these other oscillators. We get a certain tone. Whereas if I play a sine wave, that's going to be a different type of tone. The most simplistic waveform is the sine wave. And every other type of wave is basically a sine wave with added frequencies. So if we take a look at this little oscillator section here, which I'll get into in another video, we could go into let's say a saw wave, and as you can see, this has more frequencies. And what this is representing here, just unless you're confused, these lines are going from the lowest frequencies to the highest frequencies. So if I were to add these in manually, as you can hear, the sound gets brighter, and this is adding different frequencies to the overall wave. And as I create a different wave, you can see over here that the waveform actually changes. And this is a really great way to do your sound design, but we're just going to start on some of the basic waveforms for now. So what you might see here is saw waves, and you've got numbers going from 3 up to 64 on a saw wave. And you might wonder, well, what's the difference between a 3 and a 64? And basically what that is just the number of frequencies. So the higher the number, the higher the amount of frequencies. So let me play a saw 3 here. And if I play the saw 64, you'll notice it's much, much brighter. And we can go anywhere in between. So all it is with each waveform with a number in front of it is just the amount of added frequencies that create that sound. So a square 64 is, and so forth. And if I click over on the left side again, every oscillator has its own window. So this window is different than when I click over here. So you can have up to 4 different waveforms. So the next thing that I want to show you to help you understand the way these 4 oscillators work together and how they are routed is by clicking over here. And these are the algorithms. This is the signal flow of these 4 different oscillators. So even though these shapes might seem kind of strange to you, they'll make sense when you know that each of these squares is actually representing an oscillator. If I start all the way over to the right, this one right here, which is just a line going across, what you've got here is you've got 4 independent oscillators. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is I can have a square wave here, and I'm just going to have a, and let me go to oscillator B, and I'm going to use a sine wave here. Now if I play both of these together, I'm going to hear both sounds together. And let me turn this one down a little bit so you could actually hear. These are just the volume levels of each one. So you can hear both sounds layering together as if these are 2 separate tracks or something. If the sounds are not running independently, in other words, if one sound is oscillating the next sound or modulating the frequency of the next sound, say with this shape here, what this is showing is that A is being modulated by B, which is being modulated by C, which is thus being modulated by D. So now if I play these sounds, you'll notice that when I add the second oscillator, it's going to morph the sound of the first oscillator. So here's the one oscillator, and then as I bring the level up on the second oscillator, notice how it changes the character of the sound. You don't hear both sounds separately anymore. You hear a whole new sound. And that's what FM synthesis is all about. So each of these is a different way that the signal's being sent. So for example, if I start over here, each of these are independent. If I go to this next one, what we've got is these two are independent, A and B, and then C is being modulated by D. So what that would mean is, let me get my sine wave up here, and then I'll bring in my square wave. So now I've got two sounds here, and now I'll bring in my third sound, which let's do a saw wave. And now all three of these sounds are independent. In other words, they aren't being blended to create a new sound. They're just three independent sounds playing at the same time. But when I turn up D, and I'll just leave that as a sine wave, it will affect this saw wave or oscillator C. Now if I turn the level on C down, we'll still hear these other oscillators just fine. And the reason that is because A has its own signal path, so it's not being affected by anything. B is not being affected by anything. And C is being affected by D only. So only when I have D on will this saw wave here be affected. So that's kind of the magic of FM synthesis, is running one sound into another. So a really great way to think about this is think of FM synthesis as working kind of similar to like a guitar with a guitar pedal. So if you run a guitar into a distortion pedal, you're not going to hear distortion and an acoustic sounding guitar or a non-electric guitar sound. What you're going to hear is a distorted sound. It's going to change the whole sound. Now if the sounds are running parallel, as in this form here, then you would have your distorted sound and your acoustic sound, and you'd be able to hear both of them at the same time. So that's the best way to think of FM synthesis and then independent oscillators. So now that I've explained that, let's get into the coarse, the fine, and the fixed over here. So if I go to coarse, one is like the regular tone. In other words, that's the regular key that I'm playing, just standard tone. Now if I go down to 0.5, that's going to give me basically an octave lower. And if I go up to 2, it's going to give me an octave higher. Every step up from there is going to be a harmonic of the last. So in this case, let me turn a second oscillator on to kind of show you. So I've got this here, and then I'll put the coarse on 2. So this will be an octave harmonic of the original sound. And then if I go up, it'll go to the next harmonic. So basically, each one of these coarse levels harmonize. So it's not bringing it up by semitone, it's bringing it up by the next harmonic that will work, which is pretty cool. What the fine is doing is actually fine tuning between this level and an octave higher. So it's not going between, let's say, 3 and 4. It's going the octave higher than the frequency of 4 at the very highest. And now fixed is something interesting. And let me bring this back to 2. Fixed basically allows you to set to a specific frequency. So no matter what note you play, it's going to just play the same sound. So I'm hitting different keys, but I'm getting the same frequency, and I can turn that frequency up. You might wonder, well, why would I want something like that? I'll just explain this real quick. So the multi is going to be, if I jump it up, it's going to be 10 times the frequency that's shown here. 1, 1/10, and then 1/100th, which you probably can't hear this at all. So that's pretty deep. So each one of these is 10 times the increment, or 10 times the frequency of the sound. So let me show you why I would use the fixed frequency. Here, I'll show you real quick. Okay, so I've got this kind of high sound, and if I go to the envelope, maybe I just want a little click in the sound. So I've got this for my click, and then I've got my other sound. And I can turn that level down a little bit. And it just gives the sound that little click tone, and then I could kind of choose what tone I would like. I'll turn the volume up so you can actually hear what's happening. Like so. So if you got a little short sound, using fixed can really create some more of a bite to the sound. You know, having a nice click in the beginning of a sound helps it stand out more in a mix. So in the next video, I'll show you inside this window, and we'll get into all the features of each of the oscillators from inside this window.